Welcome to the next part of my YouTube tutorial series for a Unity 3D platformer. Let's see what we have already. We've already sort of done quite a lot of stuff with our character controller. Now it's time to try and get some work on the actual content so that we have a bit of stuff to do with our character. We can jump around. We've got our double jump. We could do some more animation stuff. We could do some more special abilities, unique mechanics, but I want to have something to try and actually play through to start with. And then a lot of this stuff isn't as complex. It's actually the character controller itself that's usually the complex part of programming something. We've already done stuff in the other tutorials for whenever our character moves into an object, something else happens. For example, let's go ahead and revisit that to make some collectibles. So I'm going to go ahead and right click and create a 3D object. We could import an actual model for our collectible, like a coin model that you could make in Blender or something like, or in Maya or whatever it is you want to use. For now, I'm going to represent the coins with a what should we use? We'll use a sphere, but then we'll like squish it. I think that's the best one. So we'll use 3D object. We're making a new object, and then we're going to go ahead and squish it on one axis, so then we can basically, it sort of looks a bit like a coin. You see, whenever I right click created this, it seems to have created this sphere really far away from everything else. One easy way of getting sort of solving that issue is that we can go ahead and actually change the mathematical values of our x, y, and z. So I'm going to set these to 0, 0, 0, and then whenever I have the object selected, I'm going to go ahead and press F, and it will focus me to that object. And because I've started my scene at 0, 0, 0, it's easier to find this now. So I've got this little coin. Let's move it over here. Now, the coin at the moment is untagged, so hopefully, if I go ahead and click is trigger on my sphere collider for the coin, hopefully I won't be able to like jump on the coin or any silly nonsense like that. I should just go straight through it. Okay, so looking good. It's not going to be one of the colliders that our character controller thinks they can jump on, because of, remember, we set up those tags to detect for the ground tag, and this coin isn't going to have the ground tag. It's going to have a different tag, or will it? Maybe not. Let's attach a script to it. There's two things I'm going to do with this script. I'm going to call it coin script or something like that. We're going to have it rotate, I think, just to make it look a bit flashier, and then we're also going to have the code for whenever we collide with the coin, we want something to happen. So now we've got our coin script. I'm going to open this up. One of the things we can do is create motion with coding. We could create an animation for this coin to rotate, right? But because it's such a simple animation, I'm just going to go ahead and code the animation instead. So just like the way we've got our character player controller here, and we're rotating by setting the forward transform with rotate towards, I'm going to do something similar in our update function for our coin. So I'm just going to go ahead and do transform.rotate, or perhaps rotate around. Rotate around is going to give us an angle, I think, an axis, which is the axis that we're going to rotate around, and then the angle. So the axis that we're going to rotate on, if I see here, this is going to be my idea for a rotating coin. So I'm going to rotate, and as I rotate this, I can see that is the y-axis, because you can see this y value change as I rotate it around this axis. So I'm going to want to rotate along the y-axis. And the y-axis is going to be a new vector 3 with 0 on the x, 1 on the y, and then 0 on the z. So it's just basically just the y-axis is what that means in terms of an axis as a vector. And then I think the angle is just how much we're rotating. So we're going to use time.delta time. We're going to multiply that by rotate speed, which doesn't exist yet, so we'll have to make it. But before we do, let's just quickly go ahead and put a semicolon onto that. Yes, I know rotate speed doesn't exist. Thank you for reminding me. Visual Studio. I'll go ahead and make one now as a float. Let's see if this works. I'm going to build. Now, it's giving this underscore green, which is rotate around is obsolete. Use rotate instead. All right. I'll try getting rid of this around, so it just says rotate. Hopefully this will do the same thing, and Unity doesn't complain at me for using an old method. So whenever I play the game, nothing happens. Obviously, that's because we haven't set our speed. So it's the speed is 0, we're rotating by 0. Let's set this to 10. But still nothing happens. Oh, wait, I think something is happening. It's just rotating very slowly. So set this value to whatever you feel like. Well, if 10 was very slow, then what about 50? Maybe that'll look good. So the fact that this is rotating will hopefully help us see it. 50 is still not very fast, so I'll go ahead and go all the way to 100. One of the things you may notice as you've been coding is that whenever we multiply by delta time, because delta time is such a tiny number, we have to multiply it by quite a large number to get some sort of motion again. Delta time is the time between frames. So if you're running the game at, say, 60 frames per second, that's going to be a 60th of, like, it's going to be 10 divided by 6. So it's going to be a tiny, tiny number, a 60th of 1, which means that if we, for example, have a rotation speed of, you know, how many times we want to rotate per second, is that a way? So we want to maybe every second we could say we're going to rotate 360 degrees, which is the rotate all the way around once. So there it is, rotating every second. 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. That's one. There's different ways of calculating how what the speed of something should be based on how it's multiplied by delta time. But honestly, just one of the joys of Unity is just putting in some numbers, and then you're like, oh, that's too fast. Okay, I'll do quite an extreme change in one direction. Oh, that's too slow or whatever. Okay, so we've got our rotating coin. I'm going to go ahead and make a new material for this particular coin. I'll call it coin, and let's just make it a lovely golden yellow. Drag that on there. So the next thing we want to do is for something to happen whenever we collide with the coin. No, not add a component. We can just do this in the same component. So just like we have our update and our void and our start, I can go back to my ground check and if I need to remember how to do this, but it's an on trigger enter. So I'm just going to go ahead and do public void on trigger enter. And whenever I start typing in on trigger enter, you can see one of these show up. And I can go ahead and highlight it by going down on the arrow keys and pressing enter, and it will do that for me. Lovely. So I've got the whole method made out for me there. So whenever we enter the coin, what do we want to happen? Well, as well as picking up the coin in terms of maybe a number going up that shows we've got a new coin now, what I'm going to do is just start by turning myself off. So I'm going to go GameObject.setActive false, and this should hopefully be somewhat familiar to you, this GameObject.setActive, because we used this before in other tutorials for opening doors. When you would go into your trigger, one object the door shut would turn off and the door open version would turn on. And there's all sorts of things we can do with this. All sorts of things we want to do when we walk into the coin. There we go, we collected it, but nothing happened. So let's try and make something happen instead of just the coin disappearing. One of the things that we might want to do is keep track of how many coins we have and use that to show the player how many we have. So I'm going to go ahead and right click on UI to create a new UI element. And this time we're going to create text. Now it's automatically created a canvas for us and the text. And with the text selected, I'm going to press F on my keyboard to focus in on the text. Here it is here. It's all the way down at the bottom of my screen. For some reason, it's added it at 0, 0 on the Y position. Or sorry, not 0, 0, minus 23, minus 400, blah, blah, blah. So I'm going to zero those out just like I did with the sphere. And now our text is right in the middle of the screen. If you recall from some of the UI stuff we've done before, we're going to have to anchor this to one particular section of the screen. I'm going to anchor it to the top left, the top right of the screen. And then I'll also move the text to the top right. And at the moment it's aligned. That means that the text goes from the left side of the text box. It's aligned to the left. I could align this to the center or align it to the right by clicking on this little alignment in the text inspector window. I'm going to align it to the right. Finally, it's a bit hard to see at the moment, so I'm going to go ahead and change this to a number, like for example 0. I'm going to increase the font size so that it's a bit larger on the screen. Oh, it's too large now to be contained within the box. So I'm going to go ahead and increase the width of the box. Bring it back down again There we go. That's a lot better now. I'm going to get rid of this stats by clicking stats here on the game window so that I preview. It's not blocking the view of my 0. There's another thing we can do to make this stand out a little bit more. We could go ahead and create a UI image and sort of position it in the top right hand corner as well. Align it to the top right. We're going to have to make sure that it's above the text in the hierarchy, but still within the canvas. They all have to be within the canvas object to be rendered. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to align the text to the center and then put it in the center middle as well, and then put it in the same position. So that way, whenever I resize my text box, my game view, when I resize my game view, the 0 will always be aligned in the top right corner. And now there's a better contrast because of our text box there. And, you know, what we really want to do is probably create a nice little UI art asset for this, right? For the 0. It does get quite small whenever we go from this view to full screen. So I'm going to go ahead to my canvas and I'm going to change this from constant pixel size to scale with screen size. And that means that whenever I run the game, it'll hopefully be much larger. Oh, that's maybe a little bit too large. So I'll go ahead and bring the reference resolution X value down a bit. Or rather up a bit. You have to go, okay, we'll do it up. And we did that by right-clicking on the X value here and holding it down. And then I can move this left and right to change the reference value for our scaling. We've done this before in the Unity UI tutorial. So whenever I pick up this coin, I want this big old number to go up. I want it to change. So to do that, we could have this, keep track of this in the coin script, but really we want to have lots of different coins, each with their own coin script, and something that's sort of centralized, a centralized script that can keep track of all of the different coins that have been picked up. So I'm going to go ahead and make an empty object, and we're going to add a script to that object, and it will be the coin manager. So the coin manager just needs to keep track of one thing. It needs to keep track of how many coins there are. So I'm going to go ahead and create a public int this time because we can't have 0.5 coins. I've just decided that's the design. We'll either have 1 coin or you don't. It's going to be an integer, so it's going to be coins collected. So it's going to start at 0. Now for the coin script to know about the coin manager, I'm going to go ahead and duplicate the name of this new script that I've just made and turn this into a variable within our coin script. So this is going to be our coin manager, and we'll just call it manager. And then whenever we go ahead and pick up the coin, which is when we do this on trigger enter method, just before we turn ourselves off, we're going to get the manager. We're going to use the dot operator to access all the variables, which is this coins collected variable. And then we're going to say it's equal to 1. Oh no, that's not going to work because that means every time we collect a coin, it will be equal to 1, so it'll be equal to 1 again and again and again. We need to make sure that this is plus equals 1, which means that each time we collect the coin, it will go up by 1. So I'm going to build that out. Now, before we move on though, this number needs to be reflected in our text value. And again, this might be familiar to you from if you did the first person shooter tutorial and you did any of the UI stuff for that. So we're going to go ahead and grab a text box reference as the script because we want to reference this text box that we made here, which has the number 0 as a string. You know, we could this one to change this to 1, 2, 3, and so on. So we're going to want to get a reference to that, but to do so, we're going to have to use unityengine.ui. So it's going to be public, and then it's going to be unityengine.ui.text. And then this is going to be we'll call this variable our coin display. And we have to make sure this is in coin manager because it's keeping track of everything. And then every time that our coins collected changes, our coins display is going to have to be equal to this new value. So here we're going to do it in our coin script. So the manager has increased the coins, and then we're going to do manager dot coin display dot text is equal to manager dot coins collected. Now this is one way of doing it. I could also do it inside the coin manager script and have this logic there. There's lots of different ways of doing it. I just have to turn this into a string though, because it's currently an integer, and then we're turning it into a string, which will allow us to display the text value. So there's a bunch of things we just did there. So we're going to have to make sure that it's all set up correctly in Unity. In this case, I've got the manager I have to set up and the text display. So here's our manager here. So I'm going to grab the text object and drag it in to my coin display variable. So now it knows the text box that I'm talking about to change it for the display value. And then for our coin, where's our coin? We should probably name these. I'll rename this object coin here so I can find it more easily again. And this says none coin manager on it. So we're going to drag our coin manager in here. And while I'm about it, I might as well rename this game object that has the coin manager script coin manager as well. So now, hopefully, whenever we go into this coin, we will collect a coin. It will go up by 1. Boop. There we go. Lovely. Now we can just go ahead and turn this coin into a prefab by dragging the coin from the game view scene hierarchy into the project assets. Now we've got this little coin, and we can just go ahead and duplicate this coin and move it around. And we've got these different coins for us to collect. And this is where I'm not really going to do much of design stuff, but you know, you can think about where you would design an environment so that collecting these coins is somehow challenging. We've got our first collectible. We can do lots of artistic stuff, like for example, we could design something that looks nicer in the top right hand corner instead of it just saying 0 with a box. We could have coins, it could have a little icon. I could now start duplicating out this cube. The reason I'm duplicating a cube and not just making new ones is because I just have to make sure that I set them to ground, right? And then I also had a special sliding material there. We could do some Pro Builder stuff if you remember how to do that. Maybe you've already been doing stuff in other people's classes for creating a level to move around. I can go ahead and create some sort of platforming challenge here with the coin on top. The last thing I'm going to do is have some sort of win condition so that whenever you are finished in the level, you are sort of like do some sort of celebratory animation or perhaps a camera view. So we collect all these coins. I guess I need to move one of these coins so that it's on top of this platform. And then the player will have to jump onto it. I'm interested to see what you guys can put together with this. Okay, let's see. So just like we did with our first person shooter, we can have the script coin manager check if we have won the game or not. In this case, we can say, you know, coins collected is equal to a certain number. But, you know, for example, if manager dot coins collected is greater than or equal to manager dot let's say required coins, and I know required coins doesn't exist, so we're going to have to go to our manager script and make a new integer, which is how many coins we need to collect in that level, required coins. And I'm going to have to make sure I save both this script and the other one because I've made changes to both. So if they've collected coins that are more than or equal to the required coins, we could end the game. So we could have a reference here in the coin manager to another UI element, which could just be a game object. So public game object win screen. And so whenever we have enough coins, we'll go ahead and in our if statement do set active our game object, which will be manager.winScreen.setActive. Now I'm sort of doing a bit of a hacky script here because I keep on doing manager.manager.manager. For all of these variables and stuff that's inside the coin manager. Really, I should be like triggering a method and then doing everything inside the coin manager, but you know, I've done this road now, so this will work. So now we're going to basically have to set up a win screen. So I'm just going to go ahead and duplicate my text object here. I'm going to say win, you win or something. You can come up with something more interesting yourself. And now I'm going to make it anchored to the center. And then I'm going to go ahead and press F to center on it in Unity and drag it down here into the center of the screen. It's not big enough to display the uWin, so I'm going to go ahead and drag the width out so that it's wide enough for uWin. Maybe I'll make it a bit bigger and make the font a bit bigger. And you could add children to this so that it looks a bit nicer. You could add a UI text image element rather. Make the image a certain width. You just have to make sure with this one that we have everything as a child of one particular object. So the image has to come first to be the background. So I'm going to put the image and then the text as a child. And then this is the text. And then the image is the thing we'll turn on and off. So that we turn everything off with just one object. Because if you turn off the parent, all of the children will turn off as well. So back to my coin manager, I'm going to drag my image into my win screen and then turn my win screen off by default. And finally, how many coins are required to win? Well, let's go ahead and have a look. It's 1, 2, 3, 4 coins, I think, at the moment. Did I not make 5? Okay, 4 coins. So I'm going to go ahead and say, click on my coin manager and say 4 coins are required. So now every time I collect a coin, my number will go up, and hopefully once I reach 4, I'll win the game. Hooray! Let's do one more thing. Let's have the camera zoom out whenever we win the game as well. I'm going to go ahead and use Cinemachine cameras for this. At the moment, I have one virtual camera for Cinemachine, which is this Cinemachine FreeLook, which is working excellently for our third-person character controller. I'm going to go ahead and create a new Cinemachine by going right-click Cinemachine, virtual camera, the first option. And this is just going to be sort of like a normal camera, one with no rotation, no fancy stuff, but we can position it somewhere, maybe with an overview of the level, so that we can switch to this camera whenever we win the game. And it'll just be a cool sort of zoom out moment, a bit like Super Mario or something like 3D World. So the great thing about Cinemachine is it will automatically blend between cameras based on what camera's turned on and off. So I'm just going to go ahead and turn off the entire game object of this camera that I just made so that we can turn it on whenever we win. In this case, I'm just going to go ahead and go back to my coin manager, make another game object for our win camera, WinCam, and we'll just go ahead back to my coin script and we'll do manager.winCam, and we'll turn this on as well when we win, set active to true. We might have to turn off the third-person controller camera as well as turn this one on, but let's try it now for now. So I'm going to drag this virtual camera in here to the WinCam variable, and now we'll turn that object on as well. So whenever I collect this fourth coin, the camera should hopefully zoom out. And there we go. We've got a transition to this other camera state, and you can also kind of see what it might be like to have a platformer game with a static camera as well, because we can still move our character around. Maybe you want a game where you go into a house and the camera transitions from one to the other, just like we did when we turned the door on and off in our first person game. We could have something similar where you go into a room and then the camera, we turn off one camera, we turn on the other, and it's pretty simple to do just by simply having these different virtual cameras set up. And the sort of rule of thumb is that the camera will automatically transition to whichever camera we have that's active. So long as we turn off everything else, we can just turn on one camera and it will be the camera that it uses. So we can do some cool stuff. But for now, I'm pretty happy that we've gone from just having a character walking around, and I haven't really designed an environment here, guys. Remember, it's, you can go wild with actually making a proper game here, right? But yeah, so we've got something, we've got a goal, you have to collect the coins and the win condition.